Hello, and welcome to the EVEEchoChamber. If you like what you see, please hit that sub button. If you really like what you see, you could support me on Patreon. Today I actually run the Haunted Ruin site. Another ship does join me towards the end, but I think this is still a good enough video to show you the full site. Let's get started. As you land on grid, the first wave is comprised of 5 ships. Just do your typical fighting, your typical engaging. I orbit one of the cruisers, and this time I don't really focus too much on killing the small stuff first. I just kill everything. One of the reasons I'm not so focused on killing the small ships first is that this site does not have any electronic warfare in it. That means the enemies do not stasis webify you, which slows you down. They do not energy neutralize you, which drains your capacitor. They do not warp disrupt you, which prevents you from warping. And they do not use any of the new electronic warfare modules. It's just DPS and tank. I recommended that if you're doing this in low sec or null sec, that you use a ship like the trainer cruisers or like the Conway battle cruiser that you can repair with insurance. I am still in high sec, so I'm using my Vexor Navy issue. If you are trying to solo these in one of the trainer cruisers, I've noticed I've had some trouble with my trainer Vexor. But remember that my character is a couple months younger than most of your characters, so I still have far fewer skills. I imagine it should be pretty easy if you're using any of the popular kiting fits for the Vexor or the Caracal, for example, but the problem using those is that it brings you very far from the containers that you need to loot in order to get the event loot, and somebody else can come in at the very end and loot the containers before you can get back to them, so keep that in mind. That wave is down, and the next wave comes in with 7 ships. Now, just like when we're doing encounters or other cosmic anomalies, you need to be careful when the new waves spawn, because when they spawn, if they all target you and fire on you at the same time, that's a lot of burst damage. Again, I remind you to be especially careful if you battle loot, not to have your ship stop just as you're finishing a wave. At this point, I'm very unhappy about being at half armor in my armor tank ship, and I know that the next wave is about to spawn, so I decide to extend my orbit to get farther out, so I take less damage. And, almost perfectly timed with me killing this enemy, a Vexor trainer enters the site. Now I'm very far from the cans, but I know that this is not the end of the site yet, so I'm not in too much of a hurry to get back into range, but that's something that I have to keep in mind, now that somebody else is in the site too. If you look at the left side of the overview tab, you can see that there are 11 ships in this wave, next to the red triangle. Here you see me being a bit indecisive if I want to loot this wreck or not. This is because I'm looking at my range from the wreck, and I was waiting for it to get less than 10 kilometers. Because sometimes it'll show 10 kilometers, but you won't actually be within loot range, and if you hit loot, you will begin to approach it and then you will stop as soon as you've looted it, as I've mentioned in a couple videos before. This happens a couple more times in this video. As I'm orbiting, as I'm fighting, I loot whatever I'm close enough to loot. And sometimes I'm just waiting to see whether or not I actually am close enough to loot it without stopping. Now here I'm noticing that the other guy who's in the site with me has kited off, and he's dragged a couple of the enemies with him beyond my drone control range. My drone control range is 40 kilometers. So I'm debating if I want to go approach them to kill them, or if I just want to wait for the other player to kill those last two ships, because I want to stay within loot range of these two containers if possible. I do end up deciding to approach them, though if you are the other player in the situation, it's smart of you to kite out like that, especially if he has a micro warp drive. I only have an afterburner, so if he's paying very good attention, he can kill those last two enemies as I'm leaving the cans, and he might be able to dart back into range of the cans with his micro warp drive before I can turn around with my afterburner. As soon as my drones are in range and they begin engaging the enemy, I turn back around to get into range to loot the cans. That is the first can looted. And that is the second. Op success. Thank you for watching. This has been the EVEEchoChamber. Fly safe.